This is Mondays with Vish. That's Vish Kumaran. I am Grant Cohn, and we're going to be talking about Niners for the next hour and a half. I've been on vacation. Vish has been diligently working, and he hit me up yesterday with a great idea for a show. This is basically a Vish production. I put my thoughts together when I was driving back from LA this morning. I was in LA this weekend, staying at the W in Westwood. Didn't want to say it at the time but it was real because you didn't have all the paparazzi hitting you. You know what I mean? But I had a great time. And now, so what we're going to do is we're going to rank the 10 best players on the Niners, and then we're going to talk some offseason stuff after that. So, Vish, why don't you get into it? How are you breaking it down? What's your criteria?
All right, so this is something I've thought about for a couple weeks now. Probably the hardest thing I've ever had to do in terms of a topic for this show, just because I'm going to be honest, and as a Niners fan, and all Niners fans should take real pride in this, the Niners have about 20 top 10 players on their team. This roster is really loaded when you go down to it. So I did a lot of studying, a lot of work, and I came to my top 10. I'm really excited about it. And then basically the criteria I use is I rank the 10 best football players on the 49ers without injury. Because if we include injury, we're taking away half my list.
That's key. So say that again. Injuries are not counted in here or our projection of someone's durability. We're not doing that.
It is just the 10 best when they play football players on the 49ers. And The way I did my list is a little different from the way normally fans rank players on their team. You know, fans usually rank the players they're attached to. They rank the players that are highlighted by the team, highlighted by the media. And the other thing they do, and I feel, is that they rank players whose job I took into account what player has to do what job and what player is capable of doing what job. So if you're a player that's very good at doing a specific thing and you're always able to do that specific thing, in my eyes, you're not better than the other player who has to do 7 specific things so that you can do your one specific thing that you excel at.
Agree. So those are our criteria. Our lists are going to be entirely different. And when we give our rankings, we're going to explain what we're prioritizing, and it'll probably be a little bit different. So I'm interested to see what Vish, I have no idea what his ranking is. So what we're going to do is I told him to have a list of a couple, 1 or 2 honorary mentions before we get into our top 10. So guys who are either 11th or 12th on the list didn't quite make it in. Who is your honorary mention?
Yeah, so my honorary mention, one of them is Weston Richburg. Weston Richburg for me was right there, but I couldn't fit him in just because I felt like while an excellent run blocker, pretty good, a very good center, very smart, I felt like his pass protection wasn't elite. And I feel like the other guys on my list are pretty much very good or close to elite at every single thing they do. But I think he was a little more on the outside looking in. The guy that really missed out, and to me, he's probably a top 10 player on the 49ers. I actually made a list of 11 players. I included one tie because there was just one guy I wouldn't want to leave out, and that's Eric Armstead. To me, Eric Armstead should be on the list. There might be a little bias here from me on just a player that I liked a little better than Eric Armstead, and because we're opining, I happen to like that player and what he does a bit more than Eric Armstead, so he's not there. But I think Eric Armstead is right there, and he is definitely right near or one of the 10 best players on the Niners for sure.
Okay, my honorary mention, this may seem a little controversial because he hasn't played a lot, but when he has played, I think he's been excellent. Jeff Wilson Jr. And not just because it's the way I look at it is people overlook him because he's a running back. You know, running backs are supposed to be a dime a dozen. You don't want to pay running backs. You can get him after the draft. That's all true, but he still does his job extremely well. And it's not like he's only a tough runner because he's not. He's actually, I think, a better receiver than he is a runner. His receiving ability is what makes him intriguing. And the fact that he can also average 4.8 yards per carry, run as hard as any running back. I'm not saying he's as bruising as any running back in the league, but his mentality is as aggressive as any running back in the league. And he led the Niners in touchdowns this past year. I'm going to give him an honorary mention, Jeff Wilson Jr., and I think his arrow is up.
Yeah, I mean, that's one guy that I didn't actually have really in my conversation of the guys I discussed. But I like that one. I see where you're coming from. He is a very good football player.
You know, I think a lot of times you think running back's a dime a dozen. Well, there's no reason to. I'm not going to hold in this ranking. I'm not going to like prioritize certain positions over another. If a guy's great at his position, then he deserves merit.
Absolutely, and I
Yeah.
agree with that. I
Yeah.
didn't take positional
Fair enough.
value or positional ranking into account just because for me, like if we did that, Jimmy Garoppolo has to be top 3 on this list. I just
Right.
take into account what's your job, what are you asked to do, and how good are you doing it at what level are you doing it. I also did take into account the difficulty of what you're asked to do. And for
Yes.
me, that's the reason I do drop a little bit on the Niners running backs because I feel like there's so much schemed up for them in the run game in terms of opportunity. It's all about really just reading one blocker and running really hard. So for
That's a
me,
great
that's why
point.
I
That is a
was
great point. And there's this long track record of Bobby Turner and the Shanahans creating these running backs. The reason I'm giving Jeff Wilson Jr. a boost is because of his receiving ability. I
sure.
really believe that that's his best attribute, and the
Fair
running
enough.
is secondary. So that's where
Fair
I
enough.
come from here.
Fair enough.
Okay,
That's fair.
let's get to the list. Number 10. Who is
Yeah.
your number 10 player on the 49ers?
So my 10th best player on the San Francisco 49ers is Jaquaski Tart. Now, he's a guy that I feel like has not really gotten credit.
And remember,
how good
this is injuries aside.
Yeah, it's what he's done on the field. And I don't think he's gotten credit for how good a player he has been with his time with the 49ers. And something I talked about, right, is what can you do? Can you tell me what Jaquaski Tart can't do? When he first came with Eric Mangini, he was their dime linebacker, hell of a blitzer. Then he became their box safety. He was outstanding.
More than just a hell of a blitzer. More than just a hell of a blitzer. He was terrific in coverage. And that's why they use him.
And he's outstanding against the run. Then Eric Reed, Jimmy Ward gets hurt in camp, and first game they have him play single high free safety. He has the range and the ability to do that.
He's a better player than Eric Reed ever was.
Absolutely.
Ever.
And so there's no weakness to his game. He can play quarters. He can play half.
Well, there's one weakness to his game, but we're not going there in this list.
He can play single high. He's very good against the run. He's shown he can blitz. He's extremely good in man. He can play in zone and very smart, very versatile. When you go through all of these things, right? And now he doesn't
talk about his smartness, because I think what people don't understand is that Robert Saleh the past few years has put a ton on his plate.
Yeah, of course. He's a very smart football player, and they do a lot of small checks. I mean, one of the things that was unique to this defense, and this is one of the only defenses in the NFL that can do it, is based on the tight end's motion. When they played single high, they rotated their two safeties. How many other defenses can do that? And, there are other guys who are very good at one specific thing. And
like Jamal Adams can't do that.
Right. He gets highlighted because they let him do one specific thing. In Tart's case, I feel like something that's held him back is that when you're so good at everything, the defense, it's like, okay, well, this guy can't do this, but Tart can cover and he can do that. So let's make Tart do that and let Dre Greenlaw take the linebacker and come down and hit him. And so those
and
little
so what you're saying is like by making Tart's job complicated and vast, you make Greenlaw's job simple. And so Greenlaw stars while Jaquaski Tart is making 8 checks during a play.
Right. I mean, it's not 8 checks, but the idea is that he
8,000 checks.
Sure. No, but the idea is that Tart's role within this defense, it's so fluid because of all the different things he can do. I think he's a very, very good player. I think it gets underrated how good he is. I mean, if you want to go down the number of safeties in the NFL, like there's some safeties that are good in the box, but they don't have the range to play single high. Jamal Adams is one of those. There's some safeties that are very good playing single high, like a Jesse Bates, but you can't put them down in the box and ask them to blitz and do all those things. He does every single one of those things. When he plays, he has a very big impact on the Niners. I mean, you can see it. The games he missed last year, they struggled. And I don't think Marcel Harris played particularly bad. I just think that Jaquaski Tart is that good of a player. So, yes, he's the 10th best player for me on the 49ers.
You made a great case for Tart. I don't even have Tart in my top 10. And I guess he should have been an honorary mention. I mean, he's done more in his career than Jeff Wilson Jr., certainly. I look at the Niners kind of in two different classes, and it's hard for me to rank the players together. There's these young guys who have really flashed, but a lot of guys who have basically had one good year, and other established vets. So Tart is an established vet that I left off the list and ranked behind some young guys. So maybe that's not fair. And in a couple of years, I'll look back and be like, I jumped the gun on this kid. I didn't give Tart the benefit of the doubt. That's why I left him off. My number 10 guy is Deebo Samuel. And you might be like, oh, wow, he would be way higher on my list. I love Deebo Samuel. I put some other people ahead of him, and I'll get to them later. The reason what I love about Deebo Samuel is that he's basically a running back who can play wide receiver at a very high level. I mean, he's a phenomenal route runner for a running back. He's a phenomenal receiver for a running back. And he's the most unique wide receiver I've ever seen in my life. I've never seen anyone like that. Percy Harvin was like that, but this guy's got like 30 pounds on him. And no one wants to.
He's a better receiver than Percy Harvin.
Yeah, he's just really, really good. Now, if he couldn't do the stuff after the catch and he was just a receiver, would he be great? No, but he's the whole package. If he would be allowed to play special teams as well, he'd be higher on the list. And if he can back up what he did in 2019, again in 2021, I would vault him up the list just based on the fact that he did it twice. But my theme going forward is I'm going to be downgrading the young guys because I need to see him prove it. I was around covering this team when Ron Jaworski said that Colin Kaepernick was the most talented quarterback of all time after about 9 games. So you don't want to be a prisoner of the moment. I'm putting Deebo Samuel at 10. I hope that's not a slap in anyone's face.
Fair enough. I got Deebo higher on my list. You know how much I love Deebo Samuel, so he's going to be higher. One more thing I did want to mention with Tard, I missed it in my opening statement. Just one more thing to drive this home is our guy Jason Aponte tweeted this out this morning. According to Pro Football Reference, in 15 games, Tarvarius Moore has allowed 419 yards in coverage. In 27 games, Jaquaski Tart has allowed 350 yards in coverage.
How about
that's a gigantic discrepancy. And I think part of it is everybody always wants to go, well, these safeties don't make plays. These safeties don't make plays. Are they put in positions to make plays? When you look at Jimmy Ward, if he's playing man on the slot receiver and he's got him locked up, the ball is not going to come near Jimmy Ward. So one, he can't make the tackle. B, he can't play the ball. And C, if he's covering the slot, K'Wan Williams gets to be the blitzer in their little fire zone and all of that. And now
Fred Warner gets to play as the rat defender underneath.
Right.
That kind of stuff.
They open up a lot of things for this defense because of their versatility. And I think that if Tart played in Pittsburgh with a very aggressive Blitzburg scheme, the way they let Terrell Edmonds and Minkah Fitzpatrick fly around, his stats would be a lot better when he plays. Obviously, the injuries is a question.
You guys probably realize Tart's not on the 49ers. He's going to be a free agent. We are counting all soon-to-be free agents as still Niners. Yeah. That's how we're doing it. True. And last thing, do you think best guess, you think Tart resigns with the Niners?
Oh, we'll see. I think that he's got a really good shot at re-signing. I think that they should want to re-sign him. But I also think that there is a need for safeties with a few teams like Dallas and stuff. And so they might offer him because he's comfortable with the scheme and he's a very complete football player.
And again, if Dallas, any team in Texas offers a free agent a deal, a California team has a real tough time competing. That's just the way it is.
Right.
All right, let's move on. Number 9. Who's the 9th best player on the 49ers?
Yeah, so this one's I think people are going to be upset with me for this one. I have Brandon Ayuk, number 9. And to me, this one was like, oh my God, yeah, he is so good. His rookie season was so exciting. He is so special. And I think Brandon Ayuk is going to be 5th or 4th on this list when we do it next year. But for right now, he's number 9 for me. And I don't want to give the reasons why there's 8 guys ahead of him. I just want to give the reasons why he's the 9th best player on the team. And that's because he is spectacular. He is some athlete, first of all. He might be the most athletic person on the team, which says a lot. He is special as an athlete. Yeah. He's got great hands. He's a good route runner. He's really quick. Yeah, he's fast. He's one thing I love about him is that he's not like Deebo in terms of his physicality, but he's like Deebo in the sense that he's going up the field as soon as he catches the ball. So he's not as physical as Deebo, but he's really has the same contact courage in the sense that he's ready to go up the field as soon as he catches the ball. And I think that's something that doesn't get talked about enough. Everybody says yak, yak, yak. Well, how is he getting that yak? He's not getting that yak. I also thought
he was extremely well built for a rookie. I mean, not just –
oh, yeah.
I mean, he's in great shape. He looks like he has 6% body fat. He's terrific. Yeah. He's
just got the body of an athlete. He's really special. And what I did want to mention is, like, how does he get his yak, right? How does Deebo get his yak? It's not just it's a mindset too. Their mindset is to immediately get up the field. And he's not running over people. He's making them miss. But it's the same idea that he's willing to take hits and get up the field.
My number 9 player is Ayuk as well.
Oh, nice.
But I'm going to take this a different direction because I have him above Deebo. And you don't. And we've had this argument throughout the season, and we've basically stuck by it. I love Deebo Samuel. The reason I go with Ayuk is I believe that Deebo is more valuable to Jimmy Garoppolo. You know what I mean? Like Jimmy, with his skill set, gets more out of a guy like Debo than a guy like Ayuk. Because honestly, Ayuk should be one of the best downfield receivers in the league. His skill set, his speed, route running, arm length, explosiveness, he should be getting a lot of not deep balls, but stuff 20 plus yards down the field. Imagine if he played with prime Peyton Manning or Ben Roethlisberger. That's the way I see him. So that's, to me, a more premium ability than the running back, than the wide receiver who doubles as a running back. And I'm trying to split hairs here because I think they're both A players. And I'm downgrading them because they're just basically one-year wonders in my eyes until they prove more.
Fair enough.
So
we can get into the distinction because I'm getting near Debo Samuel on my list. If you want to go to number 8 right now,
let's do it. 8th best.
So number 8 is where I have my tie, and I have a tie between Kyle Juszczyk and Debo Samuel. And no, this isn't a tie where I have one guy at 6 after this. I do have 11 players on my top 10. Yeah, I cheated a little bit, but I mean, if I could have, I would have included 12 because Eric Armstead is deserving. But I cheated once and included 11, and I have Kyle Juszczyk and Debo Samuel. And to me, the reason. So let's start with Juszczyk, right? As complete a football player as there is on the team, he is good at every single thing. There's 2 reasons why, for me, he's not higher on this list, actually, and I wanted to go highlight those. The first one was I think he had a really bad season in pass protection. They had him as the pass protection back in shotgun on third downs a decent amount this season, and he got run over a couple of times. He didn't have a really good season doing that. And then the other thing for me is that he only plays, like 40% of the snaps. For me, that's not enough for a guy that, yes, we're just including what you do when you're on the field, but the bottom line is, as talented as he is, as well-rounded as he is when it comes to his run blocking, his smarts, his route running, his hands, his pass catching, the unfortunate thing is they only still use him 40% of the time, which means that there are times that if you're one of the 10 best players on the team, if you're one of the 5 best players on the team, they won't take you off the field when you're that good. So for me, he's there. And then Debo, I mean, there's no superlatives I can use to describe Debo. He's my favorite player in the NFL. I love Debo Samuel. I love the way he plays. I love the attitude he brings. And the reason I have him above Brandon Ayuk, so let's go to that. The reason I have him above Brandon Ayuk is because I think that he makes an emotional impact that Brandon Ayuk doesn't get. And I think that's what I really took into account. When Debo Samuel plays, there's an infectious energy to this team that I think only George Kittle brings.
Yeah, I agree. Yep.
And there's a reason why, and you can see it because there's a reason why Kyle Shanahan, when Debo Samuel plays, in their first 3 or 4 plays, one of those plays is getting the ball to Debo Samuel and getting the ball into space. And it's not like a, because
if you get him in the game, you get the whole team in the game.
Right. Yeah, it's not an overly creative game. It's not always overly creative. It's a jet sweep or it's just a screen. And Debo makes 3 guys miss, runs 4 people over. And now the entire energy of the game has changed. And he single-handedly won a game for the 49ers this season against the Rams on offense down the stretch. It was Nick Mullins just throwing him a shorter pass and Debo just dominating. Even the first Rams game, honestly, you could really give a lot of that credit to Debo. So for those reasons, I think I have him higher than Ayuk.
Okay, Daniel, I'll do what you're telling me. Thank you for the donation. Number 8, I have Mostert. You made a good argument for Debo being ahead of Ayuk. It's really splitting hairs. The way I look at him is like they might be exactly the same. They're just like yin and yang. You know, yeah. Debo's a little bit better, but before the catch, Ayuk's a little bit better. I mean, he's a little bit better after he's a little bit better after the catch. Ayuk's a little bit better before the catch, but they really both can do each other's job a little bit. They're very similar. I like them. They're terrific.
The bottom line is they're both incredible football players, and it honestly comes down to who you like more because they're both really, really good.
Yeah, it's a nice combo for the future. And again, if Debo does what he did in 2019 next year, if Ayuk continues to play like he did as a rookie, these guys are top 5 players on the team. We're just kind of being cautious with them because they're young, or at least I am. So I'm going Mostert number 8. Again, because injuries are not factored in. The fact that he hasn't proven himself to be a bell cow is not an issue here. What he has proven himself to be is the fastest running back in the league, one of the most explosive guys. He seems like he's really strong too. Like, not as good running between the tackles as maybe Jeff Wilson Jr., but also he's pretty good running between the tackles. Shanahan sets him up. He sets up any running back, but I think at this point, Raheem Mostert would be good on any team, unless it was just a terrible team with no quarterback and no offensive line. And the thing that puts him, vaults him above Debo on my list and Ayuk is the fact that he has the special teams background. Now, Debo and Ayuk should be playing special teams, in my opinion. Debo should be the kick returner. Ayuk should be the punt returner. And that, and in that sense, they'd be higher. But Mostert has this whole background as like the best gunner in the league, which I'm not going to minimize. It's a part of being a football player. It is a testament to how well-rounded he is. He is another one-year wonder technically on this list. So I'm putting him. He's a
half-year wonder.
Well, okay. I'm going to say he's a one-year wonder on this list. And I'm going to say that the special teams puts him ahead of the other two guys just slightly. That's how I'm looking at it.
Fair enough. And look, I don't want to discount Raheem Mostert because I think he is really good. He's really fast, great vision, and I think there is more power to his game than he gets credit for. I thought he played really well against the Rams and the Dolphins this season, like really phenomenal.
Really well,
and
yes,
he was.
That's what I'm thinking of.
So I don't want to discount it, but for me, the reason I don't have him in my top 10 is because I think that because of the game he had in the NFC Championship game and because of his story, I think fans and people in general tend to over-romanticize what he's actually done. I feel like we use statistical arguments to bring down a lot of other players' production, but we never bring up the fact that this guy has only 100-yard rushing game in the regular season in his career. He has only a 4%. He had only a 4.5% broken tackle percentage in comparison to Aaron Jones, a player in a similar scheme who had 7%, and Jeff Wilson Jr., the same player who had 7%, in not the same player, excuse me, a player in the same scheme who had 7%. I don't want to take away from what he's done because he's a really good football player, but I do want to highlight a couple of things. And it's because, one, I don't think he's, even when you look at as a running back, or is he the best at every single team amongst the running backs on this, at every single thing amongst the running backs on this team? I'd argue no. I'd argue if you say pass protection, you're going to say Tevin Coleman. I'd argue if you look at their shotgun run game that goes with trap and all the gap power run schemes that they use, those run schemes are most suited actually for Jeff Wilson, in my opinion, more than they are for Mostert. Not that Mostert isn't great at them. I just think Wilson's a little better at them. And I think Mostert is a really, really good football player, but I just think that because of his story and all of that, and because of what he achieved in a very short time, I think people are a little ready to overstate and anoint him, and I'm not ready to do that.
See, I take issue with what you're saying because now you're making me feel like you're saying it's an emotional pick. When you just admitted that Debo is, in a sense, an emotional pick because the emotional effect he has on the team. The way I look, we got to split hairs here because honestly, I did put Mostert ahead of Debo and Ayuk. So how do I justify that? Well,
no, fair.
I didn't mean. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
okay, I didn't actually take issue. What I'm saying is, let me try my, because you really are a good debater. So let me do my best here. I'm saying that, yeah, you're right. He only had 100-yard game. That's one measurement. Another measurement is touchdowns. Those are pretty important. And He has 14 in his career, and Debo has 7 in 2 seasons. And I think one thing that people not gloss over, but don't fail to mention with Debo and Kittle as well, is that they will bring you down the field. But so far, they haven't shown that they will get you in the end zone. And Mostert does. Wilson, who I made honorary mention, does. So they get credit for that. They put the ball in the end zone. And that's a skill that Kittle and Debo, who are the co-MVPs sometimes, haven't consistently put out there. So that's another reason I put this dude number 8. Okay.
Fair. And so where I really parse when it comes to the touchdowns and stuff is because you brought up his Jeff Wilson, his backup, who similarly has a high touchdown production, right? At one point in 2019, he had the most touchdowns on the team. Kind of crazy because he was only playing like 10% of the snaps. And so when I look at something like that, that's where I start to question, is it the scheme or is it the player? And I look at a guy like Mostert, and I know you said that he could succeed in any other scheme. In my opinion, he wouldn't succeed anywhere near the level that he succeeds in this scheme. And in my opinion, if you put Deebo Samuel on another team, I think he would be as successful as he is right here. So that's just my opinion on it. I mean, we're parsing, we're nitpicking.
Right,
there's, like I said at the beginning, there's 20 players that are the 10 best players on the 49ers.
Right.
And I just have to make an argument why Mostert isn't on my
No,
list,
no.
even though I think he's phenomenal.
Yeah, no, you made a good argument. I guess I just feel like it was fair to give him a credit for the touchdowns, because although that is a team, I mean, you need the offensive line, you need the play call, all of it. I mean, he put the ball in the end zone. As great as George Kittle is, that's not really his skill set. And a guy like Jordan Reed can do, or like Deebo Samuel doesn't put it in the end zone as much. Kendrick Bourne does. So I'm not taking it away from them. I got to give a guy like Kendrick Bourne credit for that, or Jeff Wilson and Mostert. That's all I'm coming from.
Fair enough.
All right.
Fair enough.
All right. Seventh best player.
Jason Verrett. I mean, it sounds crazy, right? Jason Verrett should be a lot higher on this list. He's a very good player. I think, but I have Jason Verrett here. I think Jason Verrett they need to re-sign Jason Verrett. I think the way he played this year, you've really highlighted it because you love good corner play. And yes, Jason Verrett isn't just good corner play. He's a great corner. He's a very good player. I think he's one of the 10 best corners in the NFL. And there's not much else to say other than that. He really, really transformed this defense. I think that we talked about a lot of the guys that were missing. I think the guy that changed the fact that, you know, their defense was still very good in spite of those guys missing was Jason Verrett. And I know everybody wants to point to the Bills game. Like, one, nobody has covered Stephon Diggs this season. And that's two, a defense it's okay for a defense to have one bad game. Like, the amount of people jumping on Robert Saleh after the Bills game and Jason Verrett and all of that, I thought was a little extensive.
Yeah,
you're allowed to
Jason
have one
Verrett
bad game.
Yeah, and Jason Verrett isn't as good as Stephon Diggs. Like, okay, he was the best wide receiver in the league this year. Okay.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean Jason Verrett is in the top 10 corner.
Did a great job against DeAndre Hopkins, who might be like the third best wide receiver in the league. So he's pretty good. Yeah.
The second Arizona game, the biggest difference was the fact that they were physical with DeAndre Hopkins, and they were physical with DeAndre Hopkins with Jason Verrett. So I think Jason Verrett is fantastic, and there's not much else for me to say besides that.
All right. Look, I'm going to give this real quick because you guys are going to hate me for this. Look, don't turn off the show. All right. Number 7, Nick Bosa. And I'm saying this because he is the last of my young guys on this list. He is the last of what I would call the 1-year wonders. I'm not saying he's going to be a 1-year wonder. I'm saying he's had one good year. And as the great Eric Davis said on our show, a lot of guys have had one great year. And what I heard from that is a guy who'd proven it for a long time, who respects other people who've proven it as well. I expect Nick Bosa to prove it. I expect he will. I expect he'll come back this year, have a great year, and vault up to like top, one of the top players on my list. But I'm going to let him prove it first. That's all I'm saying. I'm not taking anything away from his game. I'm not going to the injury stuff because that's not part of this. I'm just saying he is the best of the 1-year wonders on my list. That's all I'm saying. Don't hate me.
Hey, the nice thing is, even though Grant's got him at 7, if you tune in, you'll really like where I have Nick Bosa because I'm a big Nick Bosa guy. So just stick with us. Nick Bosa will be back. I'll be talking about Nick Bosa in a much different light, I guess, because Grant just had to justify why he was number 7. And so
I'm not going to put a 1-year wonder over the top 6 guys who've all proven more. Now, again, I expect Bosa to be way higher on my list at this time next year. I'm just letting him prove it first. I'm not betting against him. I'm just saying let him do it first because I don't want to be Ron Jaworski. That's all I'm saying. All right. 6th best player.
6th best. This one's controversial. D Ford. I'm going with D Ford. I
forgot all about that guy. Wow.
Yeah, when he plays, we're talking about one of the 6 best players on the 49ers, right? If we were including injuries, D Ford, you're nowhere near this list. You've been hurt too much. But D Ford, when he's healthy, dominates. He makes a giant impact. He makes an impact. I mean, they had 3 Pro Bowl level defensive linemen on their roster, and D Ford comes back half healthy with his back versus Minnesota, and all of a sudden their pass rush is looking like teams can't even move the ball, throw the ball 3 feet. That's how much of an impact he makes. And it's because, one, D Ford is the most unique of all the pass rushers. Armstead, Buckner, and Bosa last year won with technique. They won with power. They won with great hand placement, quickness. D Ford just wins with straight speed and bend. And there's very few pass rushers in the NFL that win with speed and bend. Von Miller, Brian Burns, a few guys that come to mind, but really not many guys do it in the fashion D Ford does. D Ford is a phenomenal player. I think D Ford would be higher if he was a better run defender, but he's always had issues for me stopping the run in terms of his strength at the point of attack. The nice thing is on this defense, the Niners have had two ends when everybody's healthy who are extremely good at it in Bosa and Eric Armstead. So for me, D Ford, I got D Ford sixth.
That's a good call. I don't have D Ford on my list, and the reason is I don't think he's ever going to play again. So I know we're not taking health into consideration when healthy. I don't think that's ever going to be again. I could be wrong.
No.
So I'm just going to cop out on that one because I totally forgot about D Ford. Totally forgot.
No, I 100% agree. And if everybody says it, like, there's a good chance he doesn't play again. And, when we say when healthy, well, D Ford hasn't been healthy since his senior year at Auburn. This back problem has been a problem. He's been able to manage it and play through it. But D Ford's body is coming apart. But again, what I said at the beginning, I'm evaluating solely when you're on the field, how impactful, how good a football player are you? And we're doing free agents and all of that into account. And right now, for me, if you're evaluating solely how good a football player you are, D Ford is one of the 6 best players on the 49ers without a doubt.
Okay. My 6th best player, I'm going to go with Jimmy Ward, which is funny because I was really making fun of him at the beginning of the year. And I grew to appreciate his game. Robert Saleh explained it. Richard Sherman explained it. You explained it. The guy really has the most difficult assignments in the secondary. He is their best cover corner, cover DB. Well, not Verrett's their best cover corner, but he's their best guy to cover man-to-man in the slot. Like K'Wan Williams is almost more of a safety than he is sometimes. I mean, he can play strong safety and he's good at it. He can play free safety well enough, and he's really good in man-to-man coverage. He's had 2 back-to-back quality seasons. He's not quite a Pro Bowler, although you could argue that he's Pro Bowl caliber. He's an established vet. He's extremely versatile. He actually is a leader on the team. He's really smart. Jimmy Ward, number 6. I think you'll have him even higher. It seems like you're going to have.
I have him number 5.
Okay, so, well, let's go right to it.
I mean, these are segueing perfectly right. I have Jimmy Ward as the 5th best player in the 49ers, and something I had a little ace in my back pocket that I'm going to pull out right now. So if you remember, Jeremy Fowler was doing the little coach exec polls of top 10 players at each position in the NFL. And after one quality season, we talked about the single season guys. I don't think Debo got a mention with the receivers. Mostert didn't get a mention with the running backs. There were 2 guys that got a mention. One that I'm still hurting that I kept him off my list, and he was number 7 on that list, and that was Eric Armstead. And the coaches and execs in that poll felt that he would have a better season than DeForest Buckner this season. They were very wrong about that. But they were right about how good of a player Eric Armstead is. And the other player was, after one quality season, coaches and execs pointed out Jimmy Ward is the 10th best safety in the NFL. To me, he's better than the 10th best safety in the NFL. I think some other players got there because of name and recognition, and Ward had his first healthy season in about 3 seasons. And I think the thing with Jimmy Ward that really gets discounted is how good he is at everything. It's the same thing I talked about with Jaquiski Tartt. He can play strong safety in the box. He can play robber. He can play single high. He can play quarter, half. He can play half. He can play quarters. He can do every single thing that you ask a DB to do. And then you add that to the fact that he covers tight ends, slot receivers, everybody in man coverage.
That's to me why I would put him a little bit ahead of Tartt, is because Tartt can do everything too. But Ward, first of all, Ward's had back-to-back seasons where he didn't miss a bunch of games, which we're not really talking about. But the other thing is he can cover wide receivers in the slot. Tartt can't really do that.
Right.
And for Ward to be able to do that too and at a high level is rare. It puts him in like Tyrann Mathieu category stuff.
Right. He is. Yes. He is. I would say Tyrann Mathieu, Buda Baker, Minka, and those are the 3 guys that could probably do that. And
he's like a quieter Tyrann Mathieu.
He really is. And I'm excited. That's why I'm excited for James Betcher, because James Betcher had Tyrann Mathieu in Arizona, and Jimmy Ward, we're going to see a big season from him.
See, so this is why I have this on the show right there. I didn't know that. I should know that. I covered this.
So Jaquiski, and I think, and that's part of the reason to me why Jaquiski Tartt was their post safety a lot in 2019, and they would bring Jimmy Ward down on 3rd downs because Ward can cover receivers in the slot, and Tartt's just a little too big.
And K1's blitzing
in the slot. Oh. Right. So yeah, for me, Ward is just a phenomenal football player. He's a great tackler. He's actually one of the harder hitters on the team. If you think about it, he hits harder than Fred Warner. sounds sacrilegious to say, but he is a harder hitter than Fred Warner at 205 pounds compared to 235 for Fred Warner. So, yeah, he's the 5th best player on the 49ers for me.
All right. I'm going to say my 5th best player. But before I go forward, people are still making fun of me in the comment section that I put Ward over Bosa. The next person I'm going to put over Bosa is going to blow your mind too. And again, I expect to put Bosa over these guys next year. I'm just not going to anoint young guys too early after what happened to Colin Kaepernick. I'm never going to do it, ever. So if you've had a lot of guys have had one good year, I expect Bosa to have the second one coming up now. But I'm just not. That's all I'm saying. So the next guy I'm ranking ahead of Nick Bosa, number 5, Kyle Juszczyk. And I know you had him at 8. I'm putting him
I had him at tied for 8.
5. The reason I put it, look, the main thing you held against Juszczyk is his usage, which is true. But to me, that's an indictment of the person who signed him and coached him, not him. If you put him on a team where he could actually be like the tight end and not come off the field, like he could be fullback, but then when it's time to go 11 personnel, he's the guy, he could actually justify it. He could play 70% of the snaps. He could get way more targets. And again, he's just a fullback. Well, I'm not holding that against him in this exercise. He's
right. We're not.
Yeah, he's the best at his position.
Yeah,
he can play a little tight end. He can play a little. He can run the ball a little bit. I think he's a hell of a player and as well-rounded as any guy in the Niners. So
yeah, absolutely. And I've talked about in the past how I don't think they should sign Kyle Juszczyk because of the percentage of snaps he plays and how I feel Shanahan can scheme up with using other versatile chess pieces. That's not an indictment against how good Juszczyk is as a football player. I just think that Juszczyk is going to ask and deserve enough money where I don't think the Niners should be worried about forking it over to him instead of a Verrett or a Trent Williams. But yeah, absolutely. Juszczyk is phenomenal.
No, and Juszczyk it's not. One more thing before we go, because he may not be a Niner anymore. So this is my send off to Juszczyk. It's not just his versatility and his excellence at all the things he does. It's his smarts. He's the smartest player in the offense. Usually he's the quarterback. On his team, it's him. And all the intricacies in the Niners run game, you give credit to Mike McDaniel, Kyle Shanahan, of course, but Kyle Juszczyk, I think, allows them to get so in depth because he can pull it all off physically and mentally. And I think he was a perfect first signing to build a culture. And I'm trying to teach my offense. Let me bring in this brilliant guy. He'd be perfect for the Jets as well.
And there is a lot of smarts to what he does as a football player too. I think he gets underrated. Running backs have to be smart because they have to read what's going on in front of them and anticipate. Frank Gore was the god at this. Well, the nice thing about this offense is that because they go 21 personnel, 22 personnel, the fullback does a lot of the reading for the running back, and the running back just has to follow the fullback into daylight. And Kyle Juszczyk is one of the best in the NFL at it. He's such a versatile chess piece. He's phenomenal. Yeah.
Where's Juszczyk? That's where I'm going. Yes, he makes the decisions. All right. 4th best player.
4th best player. So this is the one that I think people are going to get on me because this is going to be a little controversial, but I got Fred Warner, number 4th at 4. And the reason why, right? I think Fred Warner, I think everybody understands why he's one of the 4 best players on the 49ers. So I'm going to tell you why I think he's the 4th best player on the 49ers. Okay. And it goes back to something I saw in the Super Bowl, okay? Everybody talks about Fred Warner's coverage. And yes, he's really smart. He's really instinctive. But what he does in coverage, I think, needs to be broken down a little bit. He's really good in zone coverage. He has great eyes. He's really good at reading the quarterback. And the plays that you see him cover Hollywood Brown and stuff, he's not covering Hollywood Brown in man coverage. Hollywood Brown is the number 3 wide receiver and running across. And Fred Warner's job within that specific defense is to carry the number 3 receiver across, okay?
Right.
There's somebody else in the Super Bowl that did something a little different and someone correct me if I'm wrong on this. I personally didn't see it. So if you see it, please, I'm willing to be wrong on this one, is the Buccaneers played 2-man. And I talked about the percentage of times they played 2-man. They played 11 times 2-man on 1st and 2nd down. Dan Orlovsky posted that stat. And when they played 2-man, there was a linebacker that was
2 deep safeties, man coverage underneath. 2 deep safeties.
Right.
Yeah.
And he played press coverage on Travis Kelce, got his hands on him, and he was in man coverage. It was just him and Travis Kelce. It was like a drill, and that's Levante David. Yeah. That's something I'm yet to see Fred Warner do. So it's not to say he isn't fantastic at coverage, but that's a responsibility I feel like if you added to him, I don't know if that would affect his stats. It might, just a little bit. He's still one of the 2 best linebackers in the NFL, but that's just something to think about. And then the other thing for me with Warner is just when it comes to speed and hitting, I feel like Greenlaw is a little better hitter and is a little faster than him. And we're really nitpicking here,
no, that
but
is true, though.
for a linebacker, my top three guys on the team, I think, are as complete as it gets. And I think Warner has that little weakness, though he's improved a lot on it, where he's fourth for me.
Well, what's the weakness?
That hitting.
The hitting. Okay, that's cool. That's cool. I'm going Verrett 4. I'm putting him all the way at 4. And again, he missed so much time.
Is it the San Diego season that makes him more than 1 year?
I think so. I think he's got 2 years. He was a Pro Bowler in 2015, and he was like the same guy last year. There were 4 years in between. So it's kind of amazing. But he's had 2 elite seasons in the NFL. When he's healthy, he can shut down almost any wide receiver in the league. So, again, next year, if Nick Bosa does what Nick Bosa did in 2019 and Verrett does what he did again in 2020, I would put Nick Bosa ahead of Jason Verrett, but not quite yet. For now, I'm putting Jason Verrett number 4 because of his season number 2.
Yeah, and I would like to elaborate on that. I think what Verrett has done is phenomenal, and I think something we don't get to take into account with players like this, because Grant gets to know them a little bit. I have no clue about any of them. I just get to watch them and enjoy them as a fan, but is their personality, their toughness as people and as human beings. And as Jason Verrett, you just have to have eyes to know that he's a special human being when it comes to his toughness and his character. For him to come back from what he came back from, like, you have to be special in every kind of way to have the perseverance and have the wherewithal to go through what he went through multiple times and then come back and play like this. Yeah, I think that deserves a lot of credit.
Yeah, his story is amazing. But that aside, what he can do at his best is remarkable. And I didn't really watch the Chargers very much. I wasn't really that familiar with what he did in 2015. But watching this past season, how he transformed the defense, how he made Robert Saleh so much more creative all of a sudden. I mean, what he can unlock from a defensive coordinator, what he can allow you to do, he makes, you don't have to have a guy like Nick Bosa. You always want a guy like Nick Bosa, but if you have a guy like Jason Verrett, you can manufacture pressure. So hell of a player. I don't know if he's going to be able to stay healthy, or if this was, a flash in the pan, but good for him for at least doing it twice. He can be proud of that.
By the way, the one thing I did want to add with this 2015 season, for those who are not that familiar with it, don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure on this. This is just off the top of my head. I think in 2015 he did the best job on Antonio Brown that anybody has done. So that should just tell you, because nobody covered Antonio Brown from 2013 to 2018.
That's right. All right, let's move on. Top 3. Who's the third best player on the 49ers?
Trent Williams. To me, theoretically, when I'm talking about weakness, I'm talking about complete player, Trent Williams should be number 1. He's the most physically gifted player on the team. There's really no weakness to his game. He's phenomenal at run blocking. He's a terrific pass protector. The reason I dock Trent Williams is because he had 8 penalties this year. A player of Trent Williams' caliber shouldn't have 8 penalties. He had 5 holding penalties. Just food for thought. The other left tackle to me that's in his conversation, David Bakhtiari, had just 2 holding penalties called against him. Now, we can go into referees and all of that, whether they should have been holding penalties. I didn't look at them, so you got me there. I just went by the numbers, and he had 8 called against him. Maybe next time I can go back through and check and make sure, okay, was this holding, was this not? But then I'd have to watch every snap and look if he got away with holding on one, and I don't have the time to do that. So unfortunately, I can't do that. And so that's what I really held against him compared to the other 2 players, is that 8 penalties for a player of his caliber. I think offensive lineman penalties, I think holding penalties are just as bad as sacks. I think oftentimes we don't measure them in the same sense. We just say, and the lineman gave up 7 sacks, but if he had 7 holding calls, it's just as bad as giving up 7 sacks. And for those reasons, those 5 holding calls. At
least you get the down over. That's all I'm going to say. At least you get the down over.
Sure, but it's still a 10-yard loss.
It still is a 10-yard loss. That's a very interesting argument. I didn't even look at the penalties. I came up with my list somewhere between Buttonwillow and Coalinga. You don't know these cities. Anyway,
no, I don't.
You haven't done the I-5 drive a million times like people out here have. Okay. I'm number 3. I'm going with Jorge Kittle. I really like Jorge Kittle. I think he's a great player. So we're splitting hairs here. Why would I put him below Trent Williams, basically? I'm going to come back to the touchdown thing. It's been 4 years in George Kittle's career. He scored 14 touchdowns. It seems to me that it's now becoming a deficiency in his game. Not that he really has one. Great blocker. The best after the catch. The best blocker. Not just a great blocker. The best blocker. The best after the catch. But the fact that he really doesn't have the greatest hand-eye coordination, that he's not making those difficult away from your frame catches routinely, he can do it sometimes, leads Kyle Shanahan to not call his number in the end zone very much. And I think that's why he'll take you to the 2-yard line, but then it's Kendrick Bourne time, Kyle Juszczyk time, those kind of things. So great player, but that's the one nitpicky thing, and it's kind of important because you look at Travis Kelce, that guy's not having a 4-year stretch where he only scores 14. It's not going to happen. And his skill set,
even with Alex Smith as his QB.
Exactly. So that's the one thing. And I feel like even with Trent Williams, I don't think he has a drawback like that. Is all I'm saying.
Fair enough. So I feel like we're segueing perfectly here because I had George Kittle at number 2.
Okay, let's do it.
Let's do it. Yeah, so I get the touchdown argument. It's one I've made in the past when Niners fans used to tell me, like last year, George Kittle is way better than Travis Kelce. And I was like, well, you look at only Kittle's pluses and Kelsey's one deficiency, which I think blocking, it's overstated as a deficiency just because he's not asked to be in line 58% of the time and block. Instead, he's asked to be a chip blocker and he's asked to chop alignment and stuff like that. We can't discredit him. He's a good blocker at doing that. And so I was like, and you don't look at the fact that Kelsey's a better route runner. You can line up Kelsey as your Z wide receiver and ask him to go beat a corner with a corner post. A very difficult route for even wide receivers. Michael Crabtree beat EJ Gaines on it, by the way, against St. Louis. But besides the point.
Corner.
Yeah, Dino route. But way besides
at Candlestick, right? At Candlestick.
No, it was in the versus the Rams.
Okay.
The game, Brandon Lloyd with 14 seconds to go caught like an 80-yard touchdown pass because Janoris Jenkins bit on a double move.
Was it in St. Louis?
Yes.
Okay. Anyway,
yes. Go look that game up. Great game.
Yeah. Right.
But 2014. But what I was going to say was Travis Kelce can do all those things. And Kittle can't. But for me, it's just everything else, just phenomenal, like outstanding blocker. I mean, we're talking about blocking in line. You've pointed it out. He makes the run game go as much as anybody just because he is such a great blocker. Personality, so infectious, brings such energy, plays so hard, so tough, so reliable. He catches I understand the red zone thing, and I think a part of it is because he's only 6'3" and he doesn't have the longest arms. And he's had a few catches where he's sliding, but he doesn't catch the ball away from his body to the same extent that some of these other guys do. That's
even
why
like
theoretically,
Ross Welly. I mean, Jordan. Right, that's why Jordan Reed was there. Yeah.
Right, and I think that's why Brandon Ayuk ultimately is going to be the red zone guy for this offense. When you add the quickness and the wingspan. Kittle's catch radius is just not that large. But otherwise, I don't see a weakness. He is so good. I'm so happy he's a 49er for the next 10 years. He's just a phenomenal football player.
Yeah, he doesn't really have a weakness. I'm just going to put Trent Williams at number 2. And this may change because Trent Williams is a cool 5 years older than George Kittle, and Kittle could still improve. Trent Williams, as terrific as I thought he was the second half of last year, he's probably not as good as he was 5 years ago. Yeah. And he's still excellent. What I saw from him this year was a guy who clearly missed a season and a training camp. Oh, not a training camp, the mini camp and the other stuff. So I didn't think he played particularly consistently the first 4, 5, 6 games. After that, I thought he was a freaking stud. Yeah. It was a lot of fun.
He was unreal. Yeah, he was unreal.
It's really, really good. I can't say really that he has any weaknesses. So even putting him at 2, I felt I really considered him putting him number 1. I did. But again, he's almost, 33? I'm not sure that his best football is ahead of him. So I'm not going to put him number 1. I'm going to keep him at number 2. I know who your number 1 is. Explain to me. Tell me who your number 1, who your best player is.
Nick Bosa.
Okay.
He to me is the best player on the team. And for Nick Bosa, let's have story time with Vish. Let's go back.
Kittle agrees. Kittle calls him the second best player in the league after Aaron Donald.
Aaron Donald, yes. So first time Vish ever came on with Grant Cohn. First Mondays with Vish. After the Jets game week 2, who got injured in that game? Nick Bosa. Vish and Grant did a segment on that show. Is the 49ers football season over? Now, for me, I went back and I think about that segment and I say, who's the other player on the 49ers that we do that segment with? I think Trent Williams is the only other player that if they had torn their ACL week 2, we would ask the question, is the entire season over? Maybe Jimmy Garoppolo because he's the quarterback. So
and he got hurt that day too.
Right. For that reason, you got to take into account the value first from that standpoint. Second of all, just a dominant football player. When it comes to, there's no weakness. He's great against the run. Maybe finishing plays as a pass rusher would be the one thing you can get on him a little bit, but he's really dominant. And then the third thing, and here's the thing I think that hasn't been talked about enough because the 49ers lost the Super Bowl. He dominated the playoffs. He was the best football player through that entire playoffs outside of Patrick Mahomes. That is phenomenal. To me, that was the best playoff run I've ever seen a defensive end play besides Von Miller in 2015. He destroyed Eric Fisher in the Super Bowl. He had his way with Bakhtiari and Bulaga in the championship game. He was working. Is it Riley Reif and Brian O'Neill? I know he knocked out Brian O'Neill in the Vikings game. Vikings fans were very unhappy about it, but he dominated that game too. He's just a dominant football player, great with his hands, great against the run, quick, explosive, strong. He's everything you want in a pass rusher. I know that Grant had him 7, but I think I made up for it by having him 1.
Okay. Before I say why you're wrong, let me say who I'm putting number 1. I'm putting Fred Warner number 1. Let me make the case for him. You made a great case for Nick Bosa. He was dominant. And I'm going to come back to him in a minute. But Warner was dominant in the playoffs as well. Warner picked off Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl. Warner has never missed a game in the NFL. Warner, and I know we're not counting health against people, but as they say, the greatest ability is availability, and he has that. So he has the greatest ability. He's also the most versatile player. I mean, he's excellent against the run, but he's even better in coverage. He can play man and zone. And the best thing about him isn't even his physicality. It's his brain. He's the quarterback of the defense, the brains of the defense. He's the leader of the defense. He may not be the most talented player. Maybe Nick Bosa is the most talented player on the team. But what Fred Warner has accomplished in 3 years, not 1, not 2, 3 years, a steady improvement that only George Kittle could really rival. Leadership that Kittle can't touch. Durability that no one can touch. I'm putting Fred Warner number 1. And let me address.
Fair enough.
Okay, if you want to talk about Fred Warner real quick, why don't we stay with him?
I don't got much more to say. You know, I feel like I was a little even too hard on Fred Warner when I had him 4, and I had to say a few things on why he was 4. So I don't want to say anything bad. He's phenomenal.
Okay. Let me say something bad about Nick Bosa then, just to lose all my subscribers in one day. No, I'm just nitpicking here. But you said that he was great in the playoffs, and he was. But there's one play that everyone just gives him a pass on, and I'm not going to. I'm just going to say it. Okay, Vish, I'm just going to say it. After Jimmy Garoppolo missed the throw to Emmanuel Sanders, Chiefs got the ball back. Game wasn't over. Hey, make a stop. Get the ball back. Give him one more chance, maybe 30 seconds. They gave up a touchdown run. Who did he run by? Big 97.
Was it Bosa?
Was
it Bosa? I haven't watched it yet.
It was Big 97. So I'm just saying he was great in the playoffs. But that one play did happen, and I'm just saying no one else's fault. So that's neither here nor there. This was a lot of fun, this exercise. Putting Bosa number 1, I have no problem with that. He very well may be the consensus number 1 best player in the league in like 10 months from now or 11 months from now. So he has that kind of upside. We'll see if he puts it together, because he does have some significant questions that we didn't really talk about today, because that wasn't part of it.
We didn't. Seven of the 10 players that I mentioned have that significant problem that we didn't talk about. I mean, if we were including health, I feel like we would have a list with Fred Warner, and then we'd have to cut like half my list, because all of them have some sort of injury history or concern or precedent.
But if Nick Bosa didn't have an injury history, we would think he'd be coming off of his second dominant season. He would be no doubt the number 1 player on the team, no doubt about it. So I'm interested to see how his career unfolds.
Yeah, This was just really fun to do, honestly. Again, it's the hardest thing I've ever had to do. There's 20, again, I mentioned it before. There's 20 best, 10 best players on the 49ers. There's a lot of guys that we're going to mention now that we haven't even mentioned. It was really difficult, but it was fun to do.
Well, let's do the snubs then. I think people realize we didn't talk about the starting quarterback, the highest paid player on the team, the future Hall of Fame cornerback. So who are some of the snubs?
Yeah, so my snubs, obviously, I mentioned Weston Richburg at the top. He was one guy I really felt was right around there. I couldn't get him in there. Eric Armstead, obviously, I mentioned. For me, Eric Armstead should be there, is there. I just couldn't fit him in with the numbers. But for me, the other four guys that I really considered was K'Wan Williams, just what he does as a football player. He's an outstanding tackler, forces fumbles, really good blitzer, just does a lot of different things really well. I had DJ Jones. I think when DJ Jones plays, I think he's one of the more underrated dominant players on the Niners. I think people are going to see his value because he's going to get a pretty hefty contract, I think, this offseason that not a lot of people are realizing he's going to deserve because he's dominant against the run. He's got enough explosiveness to be a pass rusher, and he can dominate centers as a nose tackle. And then obviously I had Jimmy Garoppolo somewhere in the conversation. For me, he wasn't in the top 13 kind of, but he was right there where I thought about him for a second. Unfortunately, it's just when I look at what he's asked to do, what his responsibilities are, I just feel like there's some execution issues that I find with the other players I mentioned execute their job a little better than his. Now, his job is harder just being the quarterback, but for a quarterback, I feel like his job is also made easier because of the play caller. And I feel like if his execution was better, then yeah, he would be right there.
He's also a one-year wonder. I mean, if we're calling Deebo Samuel a one-year wonder, then Jimmy Garoppolo's he has a lot more to prove. He has a lot more to prove. And the other thing that I think is troubling for him that we both agree on is that what is a healthy Jimmy Garoppolo post the ACL surgery? I don't think he's the same guy he was before the ACL surgery. So even when healthy, he's not quite the same guy the Niners thought they were getting. I mean, he's not mobile anymore. He used to be.
Yeah, right. He's heavy-footed now. He had very light and quick feet before.
Yeah. Okay. Let's totally switch gears and then we can take some questions. This is something I haven't even run by Vish. This is a brainstorm I had on the drive home from LA, sort of. And I want to run it by you. So here's what my initial plan is mid-February, what I would do with the offseason. And before I say what it is, my thinking is the Niners are overinvested on their defensive line. They have a lot of money and draft picks poured into that defensive line when I believe it's much more difficult to build a great offensive line. They're both important, but it's really hard to build a good offensive line. It's easier to build a great defensive line. There's just a lot of guys in the draft, a lot of guys in free agency. Look at what Tampa put together. Those are kind of cast-offs they got that are good. But anyway, overinvested on a D-line, your O-line freaking stinks. And I don't believe it's smart to just act like the solution to the offensive line problem is bringing in another quarterback. Like, hey, Jimmy Garoppolo gets hurt. Let's bring in Mac Jones. Like, well, he'll get hurt. Hey, let's just ask Deshaun Watson to be Superman. Like, well, he could to an extent, but look what happened to Patrick Mahomes. That was extreme. But even look at Deshaun Watson. He's not Superman enough in Houston. I mean, you need a supporting cast. So I'm going to go the opposite direction entirely. I'm going to beef up the supporting cast on offense to the point where Jimmy could succeed or Josh Rosen could succeed or any pocket quarterback who can throw the ball downfield with accuracy can succeed. I'm not really worried about, hey, protect yourself with your legs. That didn't work for Seattle. It doesn't really work. I want the best supporting cast possible on offense. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take Nick Bosa, okay? I'm going to trade him to the Jets for the number 2 pick. I think this is a fair trade. Look at DeForest Buckner. Great player, 7th pick in the draft, only improved, traded for the 13th pick. Nick Bosa has torn 2 ACLs and a groin muscle. If the Niners could get the number 2 pick, you'd basically be getting what you gave up for him. And I'd be cool with that. But I'm not done. I wouldn't use a number 2 pick. I would trade down. Okay? I would trade down from 2 to 5, like 3 spots. But if you look at the trade value chart, that gets you like 900 points. So that's like, if you trade down from 2 to 5, you could get a 2 this year, a 2 next year, and a 4 this year. Something like that. 2 to 6, something like that. I don't know which team it would be trade down to 4, 5, 6. I don't know, somewhere in that range. And what I would do is I would take Penei Sewell. Okay, I would take who I see as a 10-year Pro Bowl left tackle.
You don't think he would go? You don't think he would go before 6?
I don't know. I'm late. Let me get through it first, and you tell me the weaknesses in my plan. Because I look at the mock drafts, and some have him going 3, some have him going 8. So I don't know. I'm saying usually the quarterbacks usually end up going 1, 2, 3, and then maybe he'll go 4, maybe he'll go 5. I'm trying to figure out where he'll go. Maybe 4, 5, somewhere in there. Trade down, get two 2s and a 4. Take Sewell. And I want the left tackle. I think it's harder to find a great left tackle than a great defensive end. And the reason I'm trading Bosa is because I'm basically betting against him to be a durable player. I think if you set the over-under in Vegas right now for is he going to play more or less than 5% of his future games, I would bet under. That's just the way I see it. Nothing against the way he plays. I just think he's an accident waiting to happen. Sorry, Nick. So I'm trading him for the 10-year left tackle. But it's not just that. Trade Bosa for number 2, you trade down, you take Sewell. But now you got that 900 points you just got. So you can trade up from 12. You can take 500 of those 900 points, like a 2 and a 4, and move up from 12 to 6. And now you can get Devontae Smith from Alabama, who, in my opinion, is better than any wide receiver that came out last year, is probably the best Alabama receiver of all time, better than Amari Cooper. This guy could be, I think to me, Penei Sewell and Devontae Smith are the most bust-proof offensive players in the draft. And if you could bring back Trent Williams, add Sewell, and basically, let me hold off on Trent Williams for a second. You're turning Bosa into Sewell, Devontae Smith in the second-round pick. You're getting 3 players for Nick Bosa. I think that's pretty good. And then if you can bring back Trent Williams as well, now you've got a hell of an offensive line. If you can't afford to bring back Trent Williams and Jimmy Garoppolo, then see it, Jimmy. Trade him and Mike McGlinchey to the Patriots if you can, or cut him. Because I think with a team that has Penei Sewell, Trent Williams, George Kittle, Devontae Smith, Brandon Ayuk, I don't know where I'm pointing, Deebo Samuel, Raheem Mostert, I mean, just a lot of quarterbacks could succeed. I'm going to go the other way. I know it's a very important position, but I'm going to go with beef up everything else on the offense. Be easy on me, Vish. Be gentle. What do you think?
Okay, first, that was a lot to take in. Like a lot. You threw a lot of information at me, but I think I processed it all.
Okay, thank you.
So let's start. I think you wanted to trade Bosa for 2. I think the thing with that, I think there's a problem with that. It's in and of itself, because there's no telling whether the Jets want to give up the number 2 overall pick for Nick Bosa. Because if you're going to take a quarterback at 2, I'm sorry, quarterback over edge rusher on the value chart. So there's not. It would cost Nick Bosa and something.
Let me address that real quick. Let me address that real quick. The reason I think the Jets would bite is because Robert Saleh. I think Robert Saleh would probably respect and admire Nick Bosa as much as any coach in the league. Probably had a big hand in the Niners drafting him. And I personally feel that if I were on the Jets, from Joe Douglas's perspective, I would rather give Sam Darnold another chance than to get rid of him for a guy like Zach Wilson, who I'm not personally sure is that much better than Sam Darnold right now. That's where I'm coming from. But good point. Go down the list of things that you feel are weak in my argument. I mean, in my scenario.
That's one. And then 2, I just feel like I feel like you've offered a very idealistic approach for the 49ers on a way they could build this kind of dream team offense. But I think you've kind of discounted and totally disregarded 31 other teams in the NFL and their willingness to make such moves. Because the Niners, it would feel like then they would have complete control of the entire league and being able to move, like playing franchise mode in men. Like, all right, I want to send Bosa. I want these 2 picks. I want to draft this guy, but then I want to move up here and get this guy and get these 2 picks. I just think it's something that while, like, I don't think the scenario and what you're looking at, I don't think that's crazy. I think it's a very interesting thought process. I think it's a really cool.
Okay, well, let me address that one. Let me address that one. I told you why I think the Jets would be interested in Bosa. I think there's an argument to be made there. I don't know if they are. We'll see. It's worth a call. And then why I think the Niners could trade down. Again, usually in drafts, by the time, April comes around, the entire league has convinced themselves have talked themselves into the quarterbacks. And there's some desperate team that's going to trade up to number 2 for a quarterback. And someone's going to feel it's Justin Fields is just the truth, or it's Zach Wilson. And I don't know if all it takes is one team to say, I don't know if it would be Cincinnati or Philly. And probably Cincinnati won't trade up for a quarterback unless there's something we don't know about Joe Burrow's recovery. Maybe Philly wants to start over and they don't really believe in either. Who knows what's going to happen? Who knows what those GMs are going to think of these quarterbacks? I just feel like there's usually a market to trade down from 2 to somewhere 3, 4, 5 picks back if the quarterbacks are highly regarded. And this year it seems like I don't like Zach Wilson that much, but most people do. I don't like Justin Fields that much, but most people really do. So I would try to profit off of that.
I mean, yeah, ultimately, look, I don't think what you brought up here is crazy. I just think that it's something that's a little too idealistic and risky. But I think the entire idea of it, the thought process, I don't think it's wild at all. I think it's interesting. I think it's definitely something to think about. And
yeah, I mean, big picture, what I'm thinking is
yeah,
instead of just making the quarterback get the quarterback at all costs, it's basically the inverse. Why don't we
I see what you're
make
doing.
the rest of the offense perfect? Just knock it out. Finish the offensive line. Get 2 great tackles. And this, what do you think of Devontae Smith? People that like Mac Jones, I think, secretly just really like Devontae Smith.
I like Devontae Smith a lot. Now, would I say he's better than Amari Cooper in college? No. I think he's better than Jerry Jeudy for sure.
He's better over the middle. I think he's better over the middle than Cooper was.
Yeah, but I think Cooper had an explosion that Smith doesn't have in terms of speed. And I think he's the better version of what Jerry Jeudy was supposed to be. I think that's what he is. He's really smooth, great route runner, all of that. Now, do I think that he's a can't miss football player in terms of a receiver? No, I don't.
I think he's can't miss, for the record. I think that guy is as close to can't miss as those two, Sewell and him. I don't know. I mean, I thought he was clearly better than Jeudy. Yeah,
I thought he was better than Jeudy last year, to be honest.
Yes. Me too. When I would watch Jeudy, I was like, yeah, he's good, but this dude right here is the dude. Anyway, we got some questions here. In that scenario, you want to stay above the Bengals to get Sewell. Atlanta is at 4, and I believe want a quarterback. See you Thursday. Okay, there you go. Okay, trade down from 2 to 4. That seems to make sense. And then what's cool about it is you get a lot of points from trading down just 2 spots. And now you can use some of that to move back up from 12, and you can turn Bosa into 2 top 10 picks. 2 top 10 picks. And that's so you're not giving Bosa away. You're actually, I think, turning him into more than he might be worth if he gets hurt again. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Real quick, Grant, what I did want to mention is I left out 2 guys, actually, that I did want to mention when we were talking about Snubs. I left out Kerry Hyder. He was a guy I did think about, but for me, I thought that we saw the very best of Kerry Hyder play football last year. I don't think he's going to be near that production again in his career, but I thought he was phenomenal for the Niners. And then I saw a lot of people put Greenlaw in the comments. I actually didn't think Greenlaw had a very strong season last season. I don't know what he was going through and all of that, but I thought he really struggled in coverage. And a lot of the mistakes people pointed out with Quan Alexander, Dre Greenlaw wasn't playing as good assignment sound football in coverage as he should have. It was just people didn't point them out and highlight them because he doesn't make $10 million like Quan Alexander does. So he wasn't really there for me.
Good call. David W. says tight end Pitts at 12, O-line in rounds 2 and 3. It's similar logic to what I'm going with Sewell and Smith, but the reason I like my idea a little bit better, no offense, David, is because you go O-line first. I really feel like Devontae Smith, great player, Pitts, great player, but they're kind of luxuries. Like you need to address the offensive line. You can't keep working around that. If you and getting him in round 2 and 3 is great, but getting him at 12 would be better. Getting him at 3 or 4 would be better. That's just the way I look at it because I know defense is really important. Defensive line is also extremely important, but it's so hard to put together a great offensive line. And if you have one,
I have a question for those of the people that are so obsessed with the idea of drafting Kyle Pitts. I love that idea. I love it in a sense, right? Like Kyle Pitts is an outstanding football player, but what offensive personnel do you expect the Niners to run? Does that mean you don't want Kyle Juszczyk to come back? Because the 2 receivers, when healthy, Ayuk and Debo have to be on the field. I think we all agree with that. George Kittle has to be on the field. They're going to have a running back on the field. That's 4 of the 5 eligibles, which means who's going to be the fifth player? Is it going to be Pitts? Is it going to be then and don't bring back Juszczyk? Is it going to be bring back Juszczyk and Pitts? Like, I don't know how you would work an offense here. Like, in theory, this is great, but if you have a 12th overall pick, when you have a team with actual positional needs and that 12th overall pick is playing 40% of the snaps, it's not good enough. Like, Dallas tried to strengthen that strength with CeeDee Lamb last year, and I love CeeDee Lamb. I loved CeeDee Lamb before the draft, but they were better off taking a lineman or a cornerback than they were CeeDee Lamb just because of positional value and what they already had.
Also, I think the Niners have a bigger need at wide receiver than tight end because of Deebo Samuel's hamstring. That's an issue. I mean, that's the thing with hamstrings is they could be chronic. He had it in college. He has it now. It's a mystery.
Right.
It's a mystery. It could be chronic. It could not be. So if the Niners were to get another wide receiver, you'd say, well, at least they won't be at the mercy of Deebo Samuel's hamstring next season the way they were this season. You can say that about Kittle too, but I think Kittle's foot injury was kind of a freak injury. I'm not thinking, what if that foot breaks again? I don't think that.
Right.
So,
right.
I don't think tight end is a need for the Niners. I'm Ross Dwelly's biggest fan, and the guy can't get any targets.
And if people want Pitts, I think that I don't think Reed has much value at the moment. I think they could easily bring back Reed, and he could be an approximation of what Pitts would be next year.
Okay.
For cheap.
Yeah. Well, I don't expect the Niners to trade Nick Bosa to the Jets, but that's what I would do. See what happens. Hey, if Nick Bosa comes back and plays 16 games a year for the next 5 years, I will delete this video. I'll tell you right now. But I just have a feeling, I'm sorry, I don't know what it is. It's not just that he had the one injury. I guess it's the fact that there was the one in Ohio State and the one in high school. And so far the pattern he has is basically play a year, miss a year. So
do you know how many impressions this video would get if Nick Bosa comes back and does that? I don't think you want to do that. Like, people think the guys that were wrong about Justin Herbert are really mad that they were wrong about Justin Herbert. No, when you're telling them they're wrong about Justin Herbert, you're just making their business boom.
That's true. Spoken like someone who recently monetized on YouTube. Hey, by the way, congrats, dude.
Thank you so much.
Vish is now
Thank you.
an undergrad, make it bank. Bro, so that's tight. That's tight.
Really, it's really thanks to Grant.
Did you get any donations on your first one yet?
No, we didn't get any donations.
You guys are crazy. Everyone subscribe to Vish's channel right now, and next time he goes live, throw him $5. Come on. Are you kidding?
I really appreciate that.
If the Niners can move off of D Ford and Richburg, you think the Niners take a shot at a pass rusher heavy free agent pool?
Okay, so there's a couple details with D Ford that I need somebody to tell me. Is there an injury settlement one on his contract, and what is that, and how does that affect the cap? And two, I do know that D Ford, it's better to cut him post June 1st than it is pre June 1st. I think Coach Johnson, I think you're having him on again this week. He'll go through the savings. He's a D Ford expert, D Ford cap hit expert, so he can go through that. But I would love for them to take a shot at Yannick Ngakoue. And I think Yannick Ngakoue is going to be this year's Jadeveon Clowney, where he's going to be looking for the big deal. He's not going to really get the big deal, and he's going to stay around for that 1 year deal.
Did I lose you?
No, you're paused.
Am I here? Am I here still?
Yeah, you're back.
Sorry. It says my connection's unstable. You're unstable. Sorry about that. Keep going. Yannick Ngakoue.
So that's who I would like it. And I think Yannick Ngakoue, Jadeveon Clowney is the example that you should look for. I think he's going to have a similar situation where he's going to be really gunning for that 4 year, 5 year deal of excess of 60, 70 million. And I don't think he's going to get it. I think that he's going to take a 1 year deal somewhere and go try to have a good season. And so I would love for the Niners to get him. I think he makes perfect sense. He's had success in this scheme, playing as the Leo, as they call it. And so I think that I think first you have to understand about D Ford and Richburg's contracts, what the cap hits are, what the post June 1st, all of that is. I think there's a lot more to it than their stat.
Yeah. I'll get back to you on the D Ford Richburg thing, but as far as signing free agent pass rushers, I think it works. I like it. I mean, look what Tampa did. They drafted Vita Vea, but the other three guys were free agent guys, right?
Seattle originally, Michael Bennett, Cliff Averill.
I think you can get pass rushers in free agency and guys, JPP, Jason Pierre-Paul. People had kind of given up on him. Shaq Barrett wasn't a huge name when he went to Tampa. And Ndamukong Suh was on like his 7th team or something. So you can get guys every year. It seems like, if the Niners could get rid of D Ford and bring in a guy like Ngakoue. No, Ngakoue is a hell of a player. If they could get him,
no, he's
a hell of a player. Matt H says, why are we not talking about Surtain II? It's realistic. He's there at 12, all pro ceiling. Will the Niners pass up a cornerstone cornerback? Finally, value corners. I mean, we got to talk about him.
First,
have you watched him much?
I haven't watched a minute of him, so I don't know about this all pro ceiling, all of that. Second, if he is really an all pro ceiling corner, those guys don't make it out of the top 5. If he's a Patrick Peterson, the type of guy that you say from day one is going to be an all pro, I think people looked at Jeff Okudah in the same sense. Those guys do not make it out of the first 10 picks in the draft unless they have an injury concern, which I'm not aware that he has one. And 3, I don't think the Niners would pass up a cornerstone cornerback in this draft just because I think if you put the gun to the head, the Niners would always take the elite pass rusher over the cornerback. But I think this draft doesn't have that 1 or 2 elite pass rushers that you can guarantee is going to come in and be a really good player from day one. So I think this is the draft that we might see them take a corner over a pass rusher.
I'm always into the Niners taking a corner. Always. I always push for it, but I can't this year. I just can't get over the fact that the offense is the problem. I mean, even Jason Verrett should be on this team again next year. And if he's back, this defense without Nick Bosa and without a firm starter next to Jason Verrett at corner was a top 5 defense. Now it had its bad games, but still over a 16-game season, it was not the problem. The offense was a big, big problem. And to me, it started at the offensive line. Jimmy Garoppolo isn't great, but he's not awful. He got hurt. So did Nick Mullins. So would have, a lot of quarterbacks, maybe not Tom Brady because he's the greatest. But I think they really have to go offense in the first round. They got to help this offense, either quarterback or offensive line or someone. I think it has to be offense.
So I've thrown out this idea, and it's all contingent on them bringing Verrett back. And I'm going to throw out a couple of names that Niners fans won't be excited to hear. But I think it's if they can't bring back Ahkello Witherspoon, I'm talking about similar players to him, guys that have great physical traits, drafted high, played in a similar defenses, fit similar defenses, and that's Kevin King and Shaq Griffin. Why not bring those guys on a 1-year, $5 million contract and ask them to compete for the starting job? Now, you can't ask them to be your number 1 corner, but if Verrett's your number 1 corner, you have Mosley. Maybe you draft another guy in the 3rd round. Now you have competition for your next 3 corner spots, and you have some sort of depth at corner with those guys.
I like that. I mean, you'd love to get Patrick Surtain, but I think offense is a bigger need than defense. But I could be wrong. I don't know. That's the way I look at it. Jose Bautista said, is Bosa the next D Ford?
No.
There's no way to know. There's no way to know, Vish.
But they're different from the standpoint that Bosa's gotten injured again, but I don't think Bosa has a lingering chronic problem in any part of his body yet. You remember D Ford when he came out of Auburn, he had a back that was medically flagged, and that was the reason people were even scared to take D Ford in the first round. D Ford's traits, D Ford's play, everything screamed first round player. But the reason people were scared to take him in the first round because he had a bad back that he's been managing his entire career. Bosa's not there yet.
No, but Bosa has now had 3 huge surgeries. And I think I'm not going to speak for Jose. I'm sure he wasn't saying that it's an exact 1-to-1, but I think is Bosa the next D Ford in the sense a guy who's going to be in and out, who's going to not play as much as you want. Or
who knows? We just don't know. And what I'm saying is I don't want to find out. I want to trade him now. And what you're saying is give him a chance. And maybe that's the right thing. Maybe that's we'll I have no idea. We'll see. We'll see. I mean, I just said he was the best player on the 49ers, didn't I? If I said don't give him a chance, then I'm nuts. I'm a hypocrite.
Yeah. And I'm saying from what I've seen, high school, college, if he were to turn it around and string together 3, 4, 5 seasons like Fred Warner just did, I would be freaking shocked. Just because the evidence hasn't pointed that. But I didn't think Jason Verrett would turn around either. So we'll see. Zorro's Rage, hell of a name, says trade Jimmy, get Minshew, draft corner lineman, then rounds 2, 3 get a potential quarterback. If not, then fix another gap. Then have Minshew, Rosen, rookie. Look,
Zorro loves Minshew.
Yeah, I don't have an opinion on Minshew, but basically, yes. Rosen, rookie, Mullins, Minshew, Fitzpatrick. I just want to set up an offense where I feel like it really doesn't matter who the quarterback is. As long as he's healthy and a starting caliber guy who's pretty good, he's set up to succeed because he's got two of the best tackles in the league, two of the best running backs in the league in this system, the best tight end, and three extremely talented wide receivers. I mean, if you can't play quarterback with that around you, you shouldn't be in the NFL. That's what I'm saying. So, Josh Rosen, Gardner Minshew, why not? Me, let Kyle do it. Kyle, you can play quarterback. All right, man. There was one from K. What is K saying? Oh, hold on. All right. Can't be afraid to move up for a quarterback in round 1, especially if you trade Bosa at 2. Wilson with Kyle and weapons would be scary. O-line or move back at 12. What do you think, Vish? Trade Bosa for a quarterback? I mean, you got to consider it.
I would consider it. I like the idea of trading up. I like Wilson and I like Fields more than you because I it's not that I think that they're A-plus quarterback prospects, but I think within this offense they can both be really good quarterbacks.
Sure.
So I really like them from that standpoint. I'm just not a fan of trading Nick Bosa. You like I think you got to give him one more year because that rookie year was so good. And you're drafting, the business of drafting people number 2 overall is to get Nick Bosa, who you can eventually pay. That's the entire point of this. That's why what the Niners did with DeForest Buckner was weird, because you want to draft DeForest Buckner at pick 7. You want him to play 5 years for your franchise 4 years without missing a start. You want him to be an Pro Bowl level player and then give him a big contract. That's the entire idea of drafting and developing. So I know that people think Bosa has this value and we can just get rid of him, but this is unfortunately not a Moneyball league in my opinion. And I know Grant's a fan of this one, but for me, I'm not into the idea of trading Nick Bosa.
Let me explain why I'm trading Nick Bosa. This most recent torn ACL, they said it wasn't just a torn ACL. There were more things in there. We don't know what he's going to be when he gets back. We don't. He could be exactly what he was, or he couldn't. He could come back and miss another 8 games next year and not be quite himself. And then when you waited to get the visual confirmation of what your brain probably could have told you was going to happen, now the value isn't there. Now, if you want to trade him, you're not getting the second pick in the draft. You're not getting a first-round pick. So, yes, by doing it now, it's risky. I mean, you're betting. It's a gamble, and I'm basically shorting Nick Bosa. I learned what shorting means recently because of the thing with GameStop. So I'm shorting Nick Bosa. I don't think he's got it in him, and you're betting on him, and I think that's really cool. But I feel pretty confident in my short position here, unless you buy up all the Nick Bosa stock, then I'm screwed. I think that's how it works. So I just confused myself. That's how smart I am. So look, he's got the ACL plus. You don't know what he's going to be when he comes back. I just want to, if you look at a guy and say it's not durable, like we say with Jimmy, it's not durable. It's always going to be something with him. Then don't wait. Make up your mind. Get the most you can because that's a depreciating asset. That's basically a Ferrari with a messed up engine. And as soon as people figure it out, you just lost $80,000 on that $120,000 purchase. You know what I'm saying? It's got no value.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Someone keeps asking in the comment section, by the way, this question about, do you know how much it'll take to franchise use check? I actually don't. If someone wants to tell me, that'd be really nice. I think that the way it works for fullbacks is either he's franchised as a running back or a tight end, I think. So
right. I guess it would depend on where he lined up more. Is that why they played him at tight end so much this year? Are they going to franchise him as a tight end? But that's expensive too.
I don't think so.
They're not going to franchise him one way or another. No.
See, the thing with the franchise tag is that it costs enough money where it doesn't. I don't know.
Yeah. All right.
Someone said Rosen greater than Dak. Sheesh. Whew.
Well, I appreciate your your enthusiasm on that. I don't know if Rosen's that good. Final thoughts. But what I like about my offseason plan is you're giving him an offensive line. There are all these quarterbacks that the league has given up on, not mobile enough. We need a quarterback who runs around. Well, maybe you just need an offensive line, guys. Tell Seattle that all you need is a quarterback who runs around because it ain't working for them. I really think that some of these teams are like, we can cut corners. We can get run blockers in the offensive line and avoid drop back. I don't know, man. Maybe that'll work, but I don't think it does. I think A lot of
So
these teams have
I
to
have a
re-examine their
different
offensive
theory.
philosophy with linemen.
I have a different theory why pocket passers don't work in today's NFL. It's because the league is so contingent on rookie quarterbacks being very good right away. And I think pocket passers, because they have to play the game with their mind first, it takes them a couple years to be able to see and get comfortable with the speed, what looks they're getting, how to play against certain looks, and get comfortable with their playbook doing
Peyton
that.
Manning, look at him his rookie year.
Right. Peyton Manning had 28 interceptions as a rookie, and it takes that time. And unfortunately, teams aren't ready to afford that time. And you get a guy like Deshaun Watson, his rookie year. While Deshaun Watson is brilliant mentally and he's so smart now, his rookie year wasn't perfect from a mental standpoint, but he avoids mistakes because he doesn't have to cut it loose if he doesn't know what he's seeing. He can run around and just make a play, and that's what Kyler Murray's been doing. And you hope that they improve mentally as you go, and Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes have. And, guys like Lamar Jackson and Kyler Murray are getting there, just haven't improved in the same trajectory. So I think that's the big thing with pocket passers. There's just not enough time to sit and develop them with those looks.
Also, there's some terrible offensive lines out there. But if you give a guy an offensive line, if you give him some time to learn the system and get his feet underneath him in the league, it might work out. I mean, Tom Brady just did win his seventh.
Right.
It did just might work out. So I'm kind of curious to see what Josh Rosen can do behind a serious offensive line. And I'm not really interested to seeing what the next rookie quarterback can do behind a terrible offensive line. I don't want to see Mac Jones.
So
get hurt.
I think the best example for this case study is, I think Joe Burrow was somewhat of an example, but I think Joe Burrow's processing was so advanced for any young quarterback, and he's more athletic than a lot of quarterbacks. He's not really, I think Tua's the guy to look at, because Tua's wins upstairs. That's really his biggest strength. He's got a quick release, but not a particularly strong arm. He's accurate, and he's kind of athletic and elusive in the pocket, but not that athletic and elusive. He's small. So he's really got to win with his brain. And I'm interested to see how long it takes for him to win with his brain and whether Miami gives him the opportunities. Because if he's not good enough next year, they have a Super Bowl roster. If he's not good enough next year, they're going to be really kicking themselves that they stuck with him and didn't make a move at Watson, or didn't make a move at take Wilson or Fields or somebody with more greater physical skill set.
All right. Okay. All right. Well, this was a very interesting show. It was cool to rank all the players, and I thank you for hearing me out with my offseason plan. It's mid-February, so it's like the beta plan.
Right.
I reserve the right to tweak it over the next 3-4 months. I can't count today. I'm very tired. I woke up at 5 a.m, drove home. I'm gonna go take a nap. Vish, thanks for coming on. Everyone, subscribe to Vish's channel and subscribe to my channel. If you're watching this and have some thinking. All right, guys. See you tomorrow. My dad is not going to be on me tomorrow. He's still in a physical rehabilitation facility learning how to walk again, but he's making big strides. He's going to be home soon, and probably next week. So, see you.
That's awesome.
Thanks, Vish.